DD India.
So can this be described as a no-holds-barred or fierce race in the U.S. presidential polls history? We're going to talk about this race to White House on News Night tonight. And to do so, we're very honored to have with us on the show today Navtej Sarna, former Indian ambassador to United States of America. Mr. Sarna, thank you so much for being with us on national broadcaster Doordarshan, and very, very glad also to have Dr. Sriram Chaulia, Dean, Jindal School of International Relations and a renowned strategic affairs expert. Mr. Sarna, I would like to start with you very quickly. The reasons that you would like to attribute for the fact that Biden, as of now, is leading the opinion polls, and the kind of fireworks, the war of words between the two sides already kick-started, and the reaction that has come from Donald Trump saying that this is all words and all of that. Your initial remarks, why do you think Biden is getting this lead, if at all we have to believe in the results of these opinion polls so far?
Well, I think as far as, thank you first of all for having me here. I think if we have to look at reasons why Joe Biden is leading at the state and national level polls at the moment, I think these reasons probably lie in the last 6 months. Because till about 6 months ago, there was no clear Democratic candidate. Joe Biden's campaign was sputtering right at the beginning. And President Trump was looking good in certain ways, particularly he certainly was projecting a strong economy. But then things started to unravel. You had the pandemic and the somewhat it's generally viewed as a no leadership from President Trump to handle the pandemic. The economy has suffered. Unemployment has increased.
Okay.
And there are other issues like, in particular, race has come up in the United States. So clearly, given these very sort of volatile times, I think presidential candidate Joe Biden has done well and is standing in contrast as a kind of figure who can offer stability, predictability, maybe not so much flash, but he can certainly offer the traditional kind of American leadership that people are used to. And that's what he's trying to project himself as.
Having said that, Sriram, is there also going to be some sort of advantage Kamala Harris? He's decided to have her as a running mate, or is it just an initial advantage? We'll have to wait and watch how this really pans out.
Sakal, it can cut both ways. I mean, Kamala Harris identifies as a black politician. She's of mixed ancestry, as we know, partly of Indian and partly Jamaican. So, last time Hillary Clinton could not bring out enough African American voters, and that was one of the critical reasons she lost to Trump in 2016. So this time the Democrats believe that Kamala Harris will help to rally and mobilize African American voters. And like Ambassador Sarna is saying, because of the recent, the George Floyd killing and the protests against police brutality and racism and all these things, there is a pretty good chance that these factors, the conjuncture of all these, will bring out more minorities to vote for the Democrats than they had last time. So to that extent, it is, I think, going to be a game changer. But on the other hand, Trump will appeal to a lot of the white nationalism. And the fear, Biden is 77 years old, Sakal, and Biden is being talked about as a transitional president. In other words, he cannot go for a second term given his age. So what they're saying is Kamala Harris is being prepared to ultimately become president after 4 years as vice president. So Trump will play on the fears of a lot of the white majority in America, that do you want a black woman or a woman of color to become president? And do you want Obama 2.0? and we don't want that. So there are all these, identity-based factors and politics. So on one hand, it may be helpful to rally the minorities. On the other hand, it may also repel some of the segments of especially the conservative white voters who traditionally have leaned Republican, especially under Trump. So I think the populism of Trump will be trying to challenge the liberalism or the decency, the politics of decency that Biden and Harris bring to the ticket.
So what is it really, I mean, for India's interest, strategic interest, the way our Prime Minister has built his strategic partnership with USA, Mr. Sarna, if Trump wins or Trump loses, is India naturally watching these polls very, very keenly?
Well, I think the entire world is watching these polls very keenly, and India certainly is. The India-US relationship is a very important relationship for us. It is a strategic partnership which is today extremely multifaceted and layered and cuts across several fields. Particularly in the last 4 years, it has developed very strongly in security, defense, counterterrorism, strategic terms. And I think these are very crucial for India. Having said that, I think if President Trump wins, we will continue the way we have been going, which has been pretty good on the strategic side. There have been issues on trade and to some extent on immigration. And we will have to resolve these issues as early and as quickly and as advantageously as we can. If President Trump loses, then it will be up to us to very quickly get into the right groove with the Democratic administration. And there are nuances. There are nuances in the Democratic administration. I think they will understand, they do know the strategic importance of the India relationship. They will probably not be so transactional on trade. On the other hand, they will be more stringent in their typical outlook on human rights.
What could, Mr. Sarna, I'm tempted to ask you this, what could that right groove be in case of if Biden wins?
Well, I think if Biden wins, then we have to get into the policymakers very early on and bring home to them, that is, if they don't already know, the strategic importance of this relationship, particularly as we enter an era of geopolitical rivalries, where the US-China relationship is really down the tube. And India's position as a democracy, India's position as a country with which the United States has tremendous comfort in terms of a defense relationship, India's position as a maritime power in the Indo-Pacific, which has a crucial role in the United States Indo-Pacific vision today. So all these things, and plus, of course, the fact that we have a 4 million strong diaspora, which is getting increasingly active politically. So all this put together, I think it is no secret to even the Democrats that India is a very important partner for the United States, and we will have to adjust for nuances. We will have, and I don't think, in the larger scheme of things, this is such a difficult matter. We have dealt with democratic administrations before. We had 2 very successful visits by President Obama to India.
Yes.
We had the opening up of the India-US relationship under the Democratic President Bill Clinton. So I think we can handle this. So I don't see really much of a problem either way. There will be larger issues of foreign policy for the United States, in which, of course, India has a part, depending upon whether Biden or Trump occupies the White House over the next 4 years.
Okay, so Sriram, how will then a possible Biden administration, we're looking at both ways, have a different sort of approach with the Modi administration back home?
Well,
is there going to be a drastic change of approach?
No, I think Biden has reaffirmed a kind of a bipartisan consensus that exists in the U.S. Political system, that India, matters, and that India is very central to, long-term stability and for the future of the Indo-Pacific in particular. So I think the difference will be in the methods, because with Trump, he was far more unilateral in his approach to China. and he had a trade war with China, then he did a trade deal with China. Now again there is a so-called new Cold War with China, and all that has a direct bearing on us, on Indian, our geopolitical environment and our security. Biden, interestingly, has said that he will stand with India in its region, by which he means Indo-Pacific, and on its borders where it is facing challenges. And you know what he's referring to? He's referring to the recent standoff we've had with China at the LAC. So in that sense, he's talking about how he can build alliances. So India is going to be part of the idea of some kind of a broader coalition of countries that the US is going to assemble to push back China. So that is a kind of like a traditional liberal approach. Trump was not really looking at India as a counterbalance to China as much in his approach. So I think that's going to be one difference. The other difference, Sakal, is, as Ambassador Sarna was saying, the Democrats tend to emphasize more on multiculturalism and religious harmony and tolerance and those kind of issues.
Okay.
Obama to some extent was talking about those. But interesting thing about Biden is he said we will have an honest conversation with India, but we will always be friends. That's, in other words, what he's saying is, don't mind some of our moral preaching on some issues. The bedrock is that this is a geostrategically an important relationship. So I think if Biden comes, it's actually easier for us to be able to hold the Chinese in check.
On some issues, let's talk about it. What does he mean? I mean, what moral preaching on what issues?
Well, Sakal, when Obama came in 2015, he did a town hall meeting and he said that, religious harmony is important and, democracy, vibrant democracies must always watch out. So some people interpreted it as a snub to India, but actually it was not. In the larger context, wherever the Democrats go, they do this. On the other hand, if you look deeply, democratic presidencies have also been very close to hardline authoritarian regimes as per the US strategic interests. For example, Saudi Arabia,
okay.
They've never abandoned Saudi Arabia. They've become a little bit critical. They talk about, some things they believe is not. Now, when Trump came this year, there was this whole talk about religious, the CAA agitation was going on. At the time, Prime Minister Modi convinced him, and President Trump said, Prime Minister Modi told me, religion is freedom.
Yes,
there is no issue of religious freedom at all in India. Religion itself is freedom.
Okay.
So I think we have a way to be able to manage these people, but a larger picture always is the China threat matters, the China challenge matters, and we have to keep on emphasizing that to ensure, for example, now military interoperability, Sakal. We have signed 2 major agreements with the US.
We will talk about it. We will talk about that as well, the China angle, the Pakistan angle. But before that, I want to take this question to Mr. Sarna. So how is India going to really leverage this growing power of this robust Indian American diaspora that we have there? That is, you think that's also going to play a very critical role in these polls, considering the way this fight is poised? Mr. Sarna?
Well, very critical is something which is, you are going right to the edge out there. I think the Indian voters, Indian American voters certainly do matter. I don't think that the choice of Kamala Harris is primarily for the Indian American voters. Mm-hmm. She's been chosen because she's perceived as a Black American candidate, as a woman candidate. So she ticks the boxes of race and gender. She herself has projected herself largely till now as somebody who's grown up as a proud Black woman, who went to a Black university, who went to sang in a choir in a Black church, and is member of the biggest Black sorority in the United States. And she's been welcomed by Black leaders. Certainly the Indian American community is rejoicing, because in a way it is also a reflection of the arrival of the Indian American community in the United States. And she will, of course, besides the major primary object of Black American voters, that Black American women are the strongest supporters of the Democratic Party.
Okay.
And they wanted a leadership role. Just about 10 days ago or so, I think, about 100 Black athletes, activists, leaders wrote to President candidate Biden that you need to take a Black American woman as your running mate. So he responded. So I think the Indian-American vote is important. It is not the main target,
Okay.
but certainly it can play a role, particularly in the battleground states
Okay.
of states like Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin,
Okay.
which President Trump took last time because not enough Democratic supporters turned out. She will. So I think the Indian American community, to answer your question directly, is growing in political power. It's a strong economic community. They are amongst the richest people in foreign origin communities. They are good taxpayers. While still now there have been great professionals like doctors, IT, hoteliers, and so on. Now they are increasingly moving into political circles. So I think this is something which is going to grow.
Okay.
This is something which is an important pillar of the bilateral relationship.
Okay. Sriram, we want to quickly take this one up because both administrations are trying to woo this segment going out of the way.
Yeah, Sakal, 1.3 million votes can matter when it's a tight race. Right now, it's looking like Biden is winning hands down as per the pollsters. But in 2016 also, Hillary Clinton had a healthy lead and it evaporated. And so I think the race is going to tighten as the campaigning goes forward, because there are some aspects on which, Trump is a demagogue and can actually hold the crowds and can potentially sway some independent voters his way. Despite the devastation of the coronavirus, he still has a constituency, and as the gap narrows, I think Indian American voters could be kingmakers in some of the states ambassadors mentioning. So I think they will be able to use this to leverage them. So for example, after the election, typically US presidents, newly elected presidents, when they pick their cabinet, they and important positions in administrative roles, they look at communities and who voted for me and who gave me big donations. So I think Indian Americans, we feel very proud whenever they are reaching a certain level of pinnacle in terms of the state hierarchy and the establishment. If Kamala Harris makes it, great. If not, if it is a Trump and Pence again, even then you will find some very high level, possibly cabinet level appointments who are of Indian origin. So I think our power is rising, and they will be able to lobby better for India's interests there. And I think that whole cycle, virtuous cycle of our diaspora helping our national interests, our prime minister mobilizing our diaspora to achieve greater heights in the bilateral relation, but ultimately for India's national interests. So I think this is a positive sign, whether it is Trump or Biden who ultimately is in the White House.
So we've had one Namaste Trump, and if at all, Mr. Sarna, your thoughts just to wrap this up, are we also looking at some sort of Namaste Biden if he wins? We're going to wait and watch and decide our strategy accordingly, but the Indian diaspora matters a lot there.
That's right, it does. You might have a change of style, though.
Okay.
What President Trump did in Howdy Modi, for instance, in Houston, was quite unusual. Probably the first time that a sitting president went and attended a rally which was being done in honor of a visiting leader. But President Trump is different. He acts on his gut instincts. He acts on impulse. He's unpredictable.
Yeah.
I think President Biden, if he becomes president, will be more of a systems man. He's more of a traditional American leader who will follow, the advice, the briefings, the plus and minus that goes into balancing into a decision. He will certainly. He has already recognized the importance of the Indian American community, and he will continue to do so. Particularly, as Sriram also mentioned, there's another aspect which I didn't mention earlier. Indians are contributing.
Okay.
And American politicians need funds, and ultimately that opens doors. I mean, let's be real about it. So I think there will be a change of style,
Okay.
but I think the substance will remain.
All right. On that note, thank you very much, Mr. Navtej Sarna, former ambassador to USA, and also Sriram for joining us on the show, strategic affairs expert. Both of you gentlemen, thank you for joining on Newsnight. Thanks. And now let's move on to the other big story of the day. The probe into the Sushant Singh Rajput